Next week is something called Sunshine Week, where the media puts a spotlight on the seemingly obvious virtues of open meetings and open records. But there's a reason I do this show every year, and this year that reason is that lawmakers have quite literally invented a legal opinion that says they have a blanket exemption from the Public Records Act, or PRA. In 2018, they tried to pass a bill to exempt themselves. This time, they're just doing it by fiat, rejecting records requests, citing a legislative exemption that legal observers say has been invented out of whole cloth. On top of that, lawmakers proposed several bills seeking to further restrict access to public records and reduce accountability for violating the PRA. Why does it matter? Because as Northwest Now contributor Steve Kiggins tells us, open records are crucial to holding policymakers accountable, as was a recent case involving a KUOW radio investigation into who gave the order to abandon the East Precinct when the city's law enforcement and civil chains of command failed during the violent summer of 2020.
And it's a question that everyone had. I mean, it wasn't just us. It was like a big question for everyone in Seattle.
KUOW reporters Ashley Hiruko and Isolde Raftery found themselves covering one of the most consequential protests in Seattle's history in 2020 and searching for an answer to a question everyone was asking.
Who made this call? Like, who the heck made this call?
In early June, demonstrators and Seattle police faced off night after night. SPD worried activists just might set the East Precinct building on fire. Police stations had been ransacked or destroyed in other American cities during protests. City leadership claimed they wanted to ease tensions, choosing to give up ground for protesters beyond the East Precinct.
Removing the barriers was critical to removing the flashpoint, and if there were the safety concerns for people in the building or the equipment, but that is not the equivalent of abandoning the station.
On June 8, 2020, officers removed property, left the building, and locked the doors, all without seeking approval or notifying then Mayor Jenny Durkan or SPD Chief Carmen Best.
You should know, leaving the precinct was not my decision.
Best shared this message of steadfast support for the rank and file 3 days after the East Precinct was abandoned. Later the same day, Best joined Mayor Jenny Durkan's media conference, but stopped short identifying who made the call.
The decision was made as officers were taking things out of the precinct, they didn't want to come back into the precinct, and many of them did not. So we're still going to evaluate exactly the pinpoint of why that changed, but it didn't come from me.
Mayor Durkan also deflected blame. Soon, surrounding streets were occupied by activists. SPD says emergency response times tripled after leaving the precinct. During the closure, the department released surveillance videos showing people trying to set the building on fire, and others showing the escalating gun violence on Capitol Hill. Within a month, SPD reclaimed the precinct. It would take more than a year of waiting, multiple interviews, and sifting through thousands of public records requests for KUOW to finally answer who made the call to flee the station.
This decision made way for CHOP, which is unprecedented and historic. Then at a political level, you could probably draw a dotted line between this decision to leave East Precinct and Chief Best's resignation a month later. And then also Mayor Jenny Durkan's decision to not run for re-election. But also it's a question that the community has had. Who made this decision? It wasn't the police chief. It wasn't the mayor. And it turns out it was the incident commander and his team who did it on their own.
That's like a time in Seattle history that people are going to remember for years and years and years, right? And what happened.
It's nice to be recognized. Come on, right?
For their dogged determination seeking truth, KUOW's Hiruko and Raftery were recognized with key awards from the Washington Coalition for Open Government. The coalition insists their reporting helps Seattleites see through the chaos and hold the powerful to account. But Raftery says what happened in early June 2020 reverberates until today.
There are so many reasons why it's hard to kind of unpack what has happened, but it has been really demoralizing, frankly, for all city leaders and for our police.
Steve Kiggins for Northwest Now.